to Out of the Fog. I'm your host, Lori Lydia Lovelace. Tonight we have a very special episode for you. We have Dan Rubin and Allison Snow with the Food Producers Forum. And we're going to be talking all things greenery, growing your own crops, greenhouses, and more. You won't want to miss this. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Today we're digging into something deeply rooted with Dan Rubin and Allison Snow. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Lori.
for having us.
And of course, you are super passionate about, the Food Producers Forum. And tell us a little bit about yourselves, and we'll go individually and then talk about the actual forum.
Well, I moved here to Newfoundland after marrying a Newfoundlander 23 years ago. And to my surprise, we found a house we could afford by the ocean in Pooch Cove.
Oh, lovely.
And the house came with a garden and fruit trees. It was developed by the man who built the house, and I still miss him very much, Harry Langmead. So we live in Harry and Ethel's house in Pooch Cove. And I'm a gardener, and I've always been a gardener. In fact, in my garden book that Boulder published last year, there's a picture of me on my dad's shoulders in the cornfield in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, wow.
That's where I grew up.
Is that true? Wow.
Yes, I did. But I've been a Canadian longer than I've been an American. I've lived mostly out in British Columbia. But when I arrived here 23 years ago and started to garden, and the first winter came, I went, as you would, like, oh my God. So what that led me to do was to develop ways to grow food in our very challenging climate. Now, a lot of people think you can't grow food here, and that is a myth. It is a lie. We need to drop that story, folks, because it's not true. In my garden in Pooch Cove, I have vegetables. I have potatoes and onions and garlic and lettuce and chard and Brussels sprouts and cabbage. And I have corn and artichokes and kiwis and grapes and peaches.
Wow.
I have 25 raised beds and 27 fruit trees and bushes. So my journey has been one of discovering how to grow food here. And at a certain point, being a retired teacher and having a great need to talk way too much, I started offering workshops. I've done workshops called Creating the Year-Round Garden for more than 2,400 people.
Wow.
And that's how many people here are now getting back into growing their own food. And Food Producers Forum grew out of that.
Wow, yes. And Allison, of course, you have a story too, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
I will, but I'll say Dan came in not knowing all of our preconceived notions about not being able to grow food here. So I said, that's the only reason he can grow peaches. He didn't know you weren't supposed to be able to do that here.
I tried to get the town council to rename us Peach Cove, but they won't do it.
It's already a peachy town, I think. Yeah. I am from Grand Falls originally, back when it was Grand Falls, and we moved to Mount Pearl when I was very young, so I grew up in Mount Pearl. And now I live in St. John's. I work full-time at the university, but I've always been, I say, a passionate volunteer. Since I was maybe 12, I started going out collecting for the Red Cross and doing all those things. And I also like to be busy, so I work full-time. I'm full-time chair with the Food Producers Forum. I have a few businesses on the go myself, serial entrepreneur.
You were with the community garden at Memorial.
And that's how Dan and I met.
Oh,
I was
that was my
chair
next
of the community
question.
garden board
Yeah.
at Memorial and had a plot there. It was my first time ever growing anything.
Wow.
So the first year I went there and I was totally novice. And I asked some people, like, how do you do this? They said, put the seed in the ground and water it. And I was like, can't be that easy.
Can't be that, yeah.
But we happened to have one of those beautiful summers where we had just the right amount of sun, just the right amount of rain, and everything was amazing. And the next year everything sucked, but that is the way gardening goes.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
yeah, that didn't deter me. And then Dan and I, as he said, he put out a call for people interested in starting this organization. And the Hmong Community Garden got the message, and I said, yeah, that sounds interesting. I've got too much time on my hands. And he and I met at the Aquarina for coffee, meant to be 20 minutes. I think we were there for 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So it went well.
Yeah, it went well. And Dan, as he said, is a big storyteller, and we have many interests in common: music, art, culture, folklore, all those things. So I was just like, at the end of it, I said, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm in. So that's
Yeah.
basically started from there.
And it seems like a really good dynamic, and it seems like you guys, complement each other well. And
Oh, yeah.
starting this, so you have been in operation since 2019.
Yeah, this is
We
our 6th year.
incorporated in the fall of 2019, but there was an earlier thing that happened that I will mention, which was a one evening gathering at Memorial. And I called that gathering Food Producers Forum because as a gardener, I had realized that so many of us aren't talking to each other. And I had begun to get the sense of this looming food emergency that was coming our way like a steamroller. So I called a meeting, and it gathered people from the Department of Agriculture, farmers, nurserymen, people producing fertilizer were there from fish waste. There was people who worked with Syrian immigrants. And we talked about the challenges facing us for food producers, for food production.
Right.
And I called that event Food Producers Forum because it was a forum.
Right.
It was a meeting. So then later, when we wanted to form an organization, what we really needed, I felt, was a meeting place. And so our group has been founded as an information hub, a place to connect people.
Right.
And as we've done that over the 6 years, oh my God, the stories I can tell about what's going on out there in the local communities. We are taking back our own food,
I love
and it's
that.
happening very rapidly.
But we also do public forums, so
Yes.
it's a multi-purpose name.
Yeah,
So
I
we've
love
held
that.
a series of forums at the Autism Society Greenhouse that have gathered up to 50, 60, 70 people where we've done this exchange of ideas, and that's where the power lies. The power really lies in community.
Absolutely. And so speaking of that, so what is your mission with the forum?
That's a good question. Basically, is a very simple mandate. We are not an advocacy group, but we speak to the advocates. Our goal is simply to be the information hub. So we have a website with a massive amount of information on it, foodproducersforum.com.
I call it an online encyclopedia
Yes.
for gardeners.
And that's what it is. And it's not just for gardeners. It's for
No.
fishers, foragers,
Yes.
hunters, anybody really who eats or is involved in producing food of some kind.
Excellent.
Yeah, and so we've become so busy. We're meeting with people. We had a meeting earlier today with the Federation of Agriculture. We have another meeting later today about a gardening workshop that's going on next week. So we're really busy. We have a lot of projects on the go, which Dan will get into now in a minute. But basically, our goal is to connect people, not to recreate work that someone else is doing, but to take them in with us and say, okay, you're doing this and you're doing that. How can we help?
Exactly. And so speaking of some of the things that you are currently working on, Dan, so you want to talk about that?
Well, we could spend a long time, as as goes on and goes on, talking about the problems and the issues. Basically, I would say we have two existing food systems. Food in commodity, that's the grocery stores and their supply chain, broken.
Yes.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Can't afford it, and besides, oh, that limp lettuce. And on the other hand, we have the food banks completely overwhelmed, and that's food as charity.
Right.
So what we're working on is neither food as commodity nor food as charity. It's food in community. And our projects have explored that idea and found that it's valid. And the way we've explored that is, well, we did a project where we built raised bed gardens for single parents in
Right.
St. John's. That was an interesting experience. And really, our group started with a design project for something that I call the Earth Sheltered Greenhouse.
Okay.
So what is that? It's a greenhouse with its arse in the earth.
I love that.
It's a 320 square foot building
Yeah.
built with a concrete back wall set into a hillside, but insulated,
Oh,
and with no transparent roof on the north side. When you folks out there build your greenhouses, for God's sake, insulate the north wall. Because the sun comes in the south, the heat goes out the north. That makes no sense.
I've got to tell my parents that, because we've always grew up with fresh vegetables. We have gardens in our home
Yeah.
back in Seal Cove, fortunately, where I'm from. So I got to tell my parents to you know, get in touch with you guys.
It makes such sense, and
Yeah.
I'm planning to have a greenhouse in my backyard for the first time. And we had this perfect spot picked
Yeah.
out for it. And then I thought, wait, now what is that Dan always says? And then I got the compass and I was like, no, it has to go exactly opposite.
Yes.
But I never would have known, and then I would have failed, and I'd be depressed. And
Yes. Well,
he
Dan,
saved me.
that's
I'm kind of a
impressive.
weird person because I'm a scientist and an artist. I'm an author, published author.
Yes.
When I first moved here, I spent the first about 10 years working in the music community as a music producer. I've recorded my own albums over the years and all that. But now what I find, it's my background in biology that I'm applying.
Yes.
So back to the greenhouse project, we came up with a design concept. What if we built a greenhouse? Well, it's kind of like, what if the greenhouse and the root cellar met and fell in love? And then they had a baby. Well, the greenhouse that we designed is the baby.
Yes.
It's the earth-sheltered greenhouse built into the side of a hillside with only the front roof and the front wall clear plastic.
Right.
Now, when you do that in the winter, when it's 4 degrees outside or lower, and the sun comes in and it hits that back wall, it heats the concrete. And 90% of the heat for that building can come from just the sunlight. So David Goodyear at the homestead in Flat Rock has built one of these, and he grew greens all through Snowmageddon
Wow.
at a cost of $5 a month in electrical heat.
Wow.
And the way he did that is that it isn't a baseboard heater or a big honking heater with a fan.
Yeah.
It's just a tube in the ceiling of the greenhouse that draws in the hot, moist air, pumps it through a set of underground tubes, and lets the heat settle in the soil beneath the building. And when you do that, it just takes a 1.5 horsepower fan to push the air and another 1.5 horsepower fan to pull it out, and the heat is stored in the ground. So that system we took and combined that heating system with a design done by wonderful undergraduate students at Memorial in engineering. And once we had that design, we went out to see if we could build it in communities around the province. And when we started building the one that we designed at the O'Brien Farm in St. John's, we put out the word, didn't we, to see if there were any other communities in the province that might want one of these weird greenhouses.
thinking we get 2 or 3
And
responses.
we got 26 letters.
Wow.
And let me tell you, and let me tell the listeners about one of those letters. It came from Kings Point, near Springdale.
Yeah.
And it was written by a 14-year-old named Casey Budgell, who said, I built a community garden for my school project in Kings Point, and we need the greenhouse to bring back the agricultural capacity to our town, which used to be the green spot in Green Bay. And I brought that letter to our selection committee because we had 26 sites to choose from.
Yeah.
And I said, we have a letter from a 14-year-old and another letter from the town mayor saying that they will support this. And it was a no-brainer. So we picked Kings Point. And I called the academy. I got the principal on the phone, Ryan Kelly, and I did not know whether Casey was he or she or they, not that it mattered. And he said, well, I said, can I talk to Casey Budgell? Oh, yes, says the principal, I'll go get her. She's in class. And now I'm talking to the 14-year-old, and I said, Casey, were you excited when you heard we had picked Kings Point? She said, kind of. I was standing on the chair in the classroom, pumping my fist in the air, going, yes, yes, and everybody was clapping. I said, so tell me, what's the story? Tell me about Kings Point. She said, well, we used to be this big agricultural community, and we're losing our farms, and it's not a good story. We need our own food. She said, and once the greenhouse is built and we have the perfect hillside for it beside the community garden that I designed, she said, then we need a root cellar where we put everybody's surplus food and anybody who needs it can come get it.
Oh, wow.
And I'm practically in tears because I'm listening to a 14-year-old in this little town describe her vision for a future, a sustainable, survivable future. And I say to her on the phone, in the phone call, but you realize we don't have any money in this round. We hope to get money for projects like this. Your town will have to raise $10,000. She says, oh, I already did that. I applied to the foundation in Toronto. Now, Casey is now 17 going on 18. She has a full 4-year scholarship.
Wow.
She is studying mining engineering. But you know that this young woman is a force in her community. Because when we met with her and her parents and 2 students, one of whom had brought cupcakes, outside her beautiful raised bed garden, and the mayor was there, and the MHA was there, and 2 members of the town council, and 2 farmers, and 2 people from mining companies who wanted to support the greenhouse.
Wow.
They all pointed at the 14-year-old, and they said, she's in charge. We're doing whatever she says.
Wow.
Pretty amazing.
That
and
is
that's one
pretty
story.
amazing.
And now we have 15 sites in the project I'm leading, and we're building greenhouses. We built one this year in Mary's Harbor, Labrador. Kings Point Community Garden got their greenhouse, and we're working on one in Port Blandford, for which we're still raising money.
I love that. And of course, Dan, you have something that you want to show us today.
Well, I don't want to do all the talking, so I'll turn it over to Allison because she's my partner in crime here.
Yes.
I will say we have a really wonderful board of directors, gender balanced, multicultural, including Indigenous representation, and we're on a roll.
Yeah, excellent.
So yeah, I've been thinking about your question about what is our mandate or our mission, and I forgot the basic mission is that we're trying to encourage people to grow their own food because of the food emergencies we've been having, but also it's been a legacy in Newfoundland. Everybody had their own garden at one point,
That's
at least
right.
out past the overpass, and even some of us in front of the overpass had their own garden, but we're losing the skills. And Newfoundland, of course, as you know, is a very unique geographical type, what's the term, geological?
Well, geological and sociological.
Yeah.
Yeah, both.
So, and the myth arises that you can't grow food here, at least not beyond your root vegetables, which Dan has proven to be wrong. But so that's how we kind of decide what we're going to work on next. We, our board is involved in every decision. We make decisions by consensus. If someone says, no, I don't think that's a good idea, well, then we stop what we're doing. And we think about it and what would make sense for this to work in a way that you would think it's a good idea.
That's right.
So yeah, we've got a really dynamic board. They're very involved. They're very excited to continue on the work that we've started.
And our youngest member is in her 20s. She's a student at Memorial in Engineering, and she came from the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean.
We've
So as I
supported a
said,
lot of students.
we've had 18, 19 co-op students working with us.
We're deeply involved with the university.
Yeah.
Excellent. So how can other people get involved and reach out to you?
Well, it's really simple. You go to our website, foodproducersforum.com, and there's a sign-up sheet there. You let us know. You email us, foodproducersforum@gmail.com, and we're always looking for volunteers. I will mention now some of the other projects we've worked on, but all of them have been, like our board of directors, built on this model of consensus, communication, collaboration. What that means is that every single person speaks.
Wow. everyone
and you
has
make
their
a
own
decision
voice.
after they have spoken, and you make a darn good decision because you've balanced all their insights, you've attended to their concerns and their worries, and you trim what you're going to do based on that wisdom.
We
It's
started
so
our meetings
powerful.
like that. Dan, in the, I guess, the indigenous culture, you have a talking circle. And in a couple
It's
of
the
our
talking
first
circle.
board meetings, Dan started out by saying, tell me what you're up to, just like generally as a person. And we talked about it, and we said it's an amazing way to get people involved, make sure their voices are heard. And so that's how we conduct every meeting we do now.
I love that.
And all of our projects are team-based, some of which, some board members, some volunteers, but we'd love to have more members of the community get involved with us.
Excellent.
And so if someone said, well, I'm not a gardener, well, we don't care.
Oh, there's lots of things
What
they
do
could
you
do to
know?
help.
Can you build
Absolutely.
things? Do you know how to do accounting? Are you good at communications? Can you design a website?
Can you write funding approcations?
Yeah, grants and stuff
So
too.
we
Everything.
need that.
Yeah.
So if people go to our website, that's www.foodproducersforum.com, you will see a brand new website that we launched last week.
Oh wow.
And it is an interactive place for people to find food, find each other, learn things, ask questions, and generate ideas. We're a communications hub. And I thought this was all about food, but really what it's about is the power of community.
Absolutely.
So some of our other projects, we've mentioned the raised bed gardens for single parents. We've mentioned the greenhouse project. So the next thing that we did was we held a 3-day online provincial conference in partnership with the Faculty of Medicine at Memorial.
That was
and that
during
ran
COVID.
for 3 days.
We were planning to do it in person, and Dan just whipped this up out of thin air.
No, I did not. There was a team. There was a team.
You had the concept of let's do a fully online conference, and we were like,
Well,
how's that going to work?
We
But
went
it
to
worked.
rent the facility at Signal Hill, and it was so expensive. We couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So we got in cahoots with the folks at the Faculty of Medicine, because we have a member of the faculty on our board. And working with their media team, we put together a 3-day conference with 32 speakers, totally interactive, where people could, in the chat, they could put in their comments. We had a team of 7 people sitting in the next room writing down every single concept and comment and question. We ended up with 58 recommendations from those participating online all over the province. And we had 32 presenters. We still have their videos online for people to see, starting with Ross Travers on the history of agriculture, including soil scientists, and Casey Budgell.
Yes.
And,
I want to meet her now.
And we had
Who's who
Mary
of
Walsh.
food
Mary
production.
Walsh. Say what?
I said it's like the who's who of food production.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
it's the networking that's become so magical. And the truth is, and I do not understand this, that every time we define a need, like we need a person who can do this, they show up within the week.
It's like they know.
I do not know how this works. I
We're
do not
magical
know.
manifestors.
Yeah,
That's all I
yes,
can say.
yes.
And what that means for the people listening is you probably should join the conspiracy to grow food in Newfoundland, because we need people with such an enormous range of skills working together to achieve this. So when we build a greenhouse, that means engineers were involved, architects were involved, builders were involved, students were involved, and
just
we're
the-
digging holes in the ground.
Exactly, and just the economic change and the climate change and everything that's involved with that, that's, bringing back into the environment, that's helping.
It's a game
Yeah,
changer.
we're not just
Yeah.
addressing food security here. We're addressing community solidity and culture, heritage, sustainability, climate change, community health. It's the
And
whole
empowerment.
bundle.
People were so devastated by Snowmageddon.
Yes.
And they were just like, what are we going to do? We can't get the food on the trucks. The trucks aren't coming.
The lineup around the block.
Yes.
That's
And I
Sobeys.
mean, there's certain things that will have to be imported probably forever, but I would say 85% of what we consume can be grown here.
Wow, yeah.
And it's just we're trying to empower individuals
Yeah.
and communities to understand that you can make a change, and it feels really good.
What I've learned, because I'm a Newfoundlander by choice, I'm an NBC, is that this is such an amazing place, and people tend to take that kind of, Yeah, you know, the people like to complain here.
Yes,
But
yes.
the truth is that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are powerful people. They know how to do things. And the skills that are being lost, well, we can bring those skills back.
Right.
How to make pickled beets. How to cook a jig's dinner if you've never been from here.
Oh my goodness, pickle beets and
I
jigs
never
dinner. You're
get
making
the-
me
Drooling
salivate.
from
Yeah, I
here.
would say I'm drooling over here.
I never get the peas pudding right. But anyway.
Oh my gosh, I'll make it for you.
So let me, this is lovely. Let me mention the one other project that we did that leads into the project that I now supervise or coordinate. We did a survey in 2022 in the fall. And for 4 months, we put it online and we asked really specific, useful questions about what do you grow, what do you hunt, what do you fish, what do you forage, and we identified the pounds of broccoli, the pounds. Do you know that 2% of what backyard gardeners are producing here in Newfoundland are grapes?
I had no clue.
No,
No,
we
So
grapes.
we got responses online from 742 people.
Wow.
Now about 100 of those sold something that they grew. There was about 30 large commercial farmers, about another 70 people who grow small scale, and then 642 people who are just hunters, fishers, foragers, gardeners.
Wow, that's incredible. And
Yeah.
It is.
yeah, and we're so happy to have you here to talk about this. And thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, we love it.
Our pleasure.
Yes,
Thank you
it was
so
so
much.
informative, I gotta say. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back after this.
Your opinion matters, and we want to hear from you. Get in touch with us using our viewer feedback line, your direct connection to shaping the shows you love. It's easy. Just grab your phone, scan the QR code on your screen, and take our quick survey. Share your thoughts, and let's make your viewing experience even better.
You're watching Rogers TV St. John's.
Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode. We want to thank Dan Rubin and Allison Snow for coming in to talk about all things greenery and food producing and so much more. So if you're interested, be sure to reach out to them on their website. Until next time, much love.
This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
We want to hear from you. Provide feedback on this show or find out how you can get involved. Call, email us, or scan the QR code to take our quick survey.
In hockey, only one name transcends the game. It's not Gordy, the great one, or the great eight. Not a Bobby, or a Bob. Not Sid the Kid, or this kid either. And it's not Connor, and no, not even that Connor. The one name that rises above all others is Stanley.
Lord Stanley.
I was born and raised in Musqueam First Nation territory by my mother, who spoke Hunkaminam to me. As a child, I ceased using my mother tongue, as to use any language other than English was considered not being Canadian, so I was told. The old people came to me in a dream and reminded me of who I am and where I come from. I have reawakened. My roots are strong, and I'm no longer a silent speaker. My language tells me where I am from. It defines me and guides me to teach others to learn and understand our culture and traditions. A gift for those in the present and the unborn generations. What was lost is found. What was asleep has awakened. My blood is here, and I am complete. I have returned home.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely.